Today I welcome you to this message with a grateful heart. Thank you for joining us, because the purpose of this video is not just to give you information, not just to comfort you with familiar words, but to open your eyes to a truth that could absolutely change the way you see God and the way you walk through life. Psalm 121 is one of those passages many people know, many people have read, many people have quoted, but very few people have really understood. And today my goal is simple, to help you see the secret that most people miss. Now let me begin by asking you a question. What would you think of a man who was very wealthy, but constantly complained about being poor? What would you think of a woman who had an enormous inheritance, but always lived as if she was destitute? You would probably say, something is wrong here. They are not living in light of what they really have. And yet, isn't that exactly what many believers do? We are children of God. We are heirs with Christ. We have the promises of God spoken over our lives, but we walk around with fear, anxiety, doubt, insecurity, acting as though we have been left to fend for ourselves. Psalm 121 confronts that problem. It reminds us that we are not kept by luck. We are not kept by money. We are not kept by insurance policies. We are not kept by our own strength. But we are kept by the Lord Himself, the Maker of heaven and earth. That is the secret hidden inside this short psalm. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you believe it, it will change the way you live. So let's begin with the first two verses. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the Maker of heaven and earth. Notice how this begins. The psalmist looks up to the mountains and asks, where does my help come from? It is the question of every human heart. When you are afraid, when you are uncertain, when you face dangers, where do you turn? Now let me make this very practical. Some of us turn to people, friends, family, maybe a mentor or someone we admire. Some of us turn to systems, insurance, bank accounts, retirement savings. Some of us turn inward, to our own intelligence, our own strength, our own plans. But the psalmist tells us plainly, my help comes from the Lord. He does not say my help comes from the mountains. He does not say my help comes from idols. He does not say my help comes from my own cleverness. He says my help comes from the Lord, the Maker of heaven and earth. Now let's think about the background, because the background is crucial. Psalm 121 is one of the songs of ascents. These were the songs sung by Jewish pilgrims as they traveled up to Jerusalem for the great feasts. 3 times a year the men of Israel were commanded to appear before the Lord in Jerusalem. And as they walked that journey, as they climbed those steep hills, as they faced the blazing sun by day and the cold winds by night, they sang. They sang not because the journey was easy, but precisely because the journey was dangerous. They sang to remind themselves of where their help came from. The road to Jerusalem was filled with threats. By day, the sun beat down mercilessly. The heat could cause dehydration, exhaustion, even death. By night, the temperatures dropped, and many believed the moon could harm you with what they called moonstroke. Along the path, thieves and robbers often hid in the rocks, waiting to ambush travelers. Wild animals roamed the hills. It was not an easy journey. So when the psalmist says, I lift up my eyes to the hills, he is not admiring the scenery. He is not saying, look how beautiful the mountains are. He is saying, these hills are full of danger. These hills are filled with threats. My eyes see danger all around me. Where will my help come from? And that is the question many of us are asking today. You may not be walking to Jerusalem, but you are walking through life, and life is filled with dangers of its own. Financial pressures, health problems, broken relationships, temptations, spiritual warfare. All of these are the hills we face. And like the psalmist, we look up and we ask, where does my help come from? Now here is the secret most people miss. The psalmist is not saying my help comes from the mountains, my help comes from the high places, my help comes from idols. In that time, many of the pagan nations believed the gods of the mountains had power. They built shrines and altars on the hills. They thought the mountains themselves held strength. But the man of God says, no, my help does not come from the mountains. It comes from the maker of the mountains. My help does not come from created things. It comes from the Creator. My help does not come from resources. It comes from the source. That's what many people miss today. They trust in the mountain instead of the maker of the mountain. They trust in the paycheck instead of the provider. They trust in the medicine instead of the healer. They trust in the system instead of the sovereign. And friend, let me tell you, if your help comes from the mountains, then your help is limited. But if your help comes from the maker of heaven and earth, your help is unlimited. If your help comes from people, then it is fragile. But if your help comes from God, then it is eternal. If your help comes from what you can see, it can be taken away. But if your help comes from the one who never changes, it cannot be lost. So the psalmist begins by shifting his focus. He looks up at the hills, he sees the danger, but then he lifts his eyes higher. He lifts his eyes beyond the mountains to the one who made them. And that is what we must do. Faith is not proven in the comfort of the temple. Faith is proven on the dangerous road. Faith is not proven when everything is safe and secure. Faith is proven when the sun is burning, when the shadows are frightening, when the enemies are lurking, and you declare, "My help comes from the Lord." That is when faith is real. That is when faith matters. Let me put it to you this way. It is easy to say, "God is my help," when you are sitting in a comfortable pew on Sunday morning. It is another thing entirely to say, "God is my help," when you are standing by the hospital bed of a loved one, when you are staring at bills you cannot pay, when you are walking through a dark valley of depression or fear. But that is exactly the context of Psalm 121. It was not sung in safety. It was sung on the road in danger, in the heat of the sun and the chill of the night. That's where the promises of God matter most. So here is the secret of Psalm 121 that most people miss. This psalm is not simply a poem of comfort. It is a declaration of confidence in the God who keeps us, even when we are surrounded by danger. It is not about escaping the journey. It is about enduring the journey because the Lord Himself is your keeper. It is not about avoiding the mountains. It is about trusting the Maker of the mountains. And I want you to see this clearly, because if you miss it, you will reduce Psalm 121 to a Hallmark card, a nice little verse to make you feel better. But if you understand it, you will see it as a battle cry, a declaration of trust, a proclamation of faith. You will begin to walk differently, not because the road is safe, but because the keeper of your soul walks with you. And that brings us back to the secret of Psalm 121. The secret is not that there will be no danger, no heat, no cold, no enemies. The secret is that God Himself is your keeper. He is the one watching over your life, your steps, your soul. And that truth, if you believe it, if you live it, will change the way you see everything. Now that we understand the setting, let's walk carefully through each part of this psalm, because every 2 verses unfold a new dimension of God's character as our keeper. Remember, this psalm is not just a song of comfort. It is a declaration of trust on a dangerous road. Let's begin with verses 1 and 2. Lifting my eyes to the mountains, the question of help, verses 1-2. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The psalm begins with a question, and it is not a casual one. It is the cry of a traveler who feels the danger of the road. He looks at the mountains ahead, steep, rugged, filled with shadows, hiding places for thieves, reminders of pagan shrines built on the high places. The mountains were both beautiful and dangerous, and so the question rises, where does my help come from? Let's pause here, because many of us ask the same question every day. When you face a crisis in your health, when the bills pile up, when you don't know how to guide your children, when the future looks uncertain, where does your help come from? Too often, we confuse the instrument with the source. We look to the mountains, to money, to people, to our own intelligence, and we forget the one who created all these things. The psalmist declares, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." That is the first secret many people miss. Help does not come from the mountain. It comes from the maker of the mountain. The mountain is a tool, but God is the source. The paycheck is a tool, but God is the provider. The medicine is a tool, but God is the healer. The wisdom of a friend is a tool, but God is the counselor. Friend, mark this down. If your help comes from the mountains, your help is limited. But if your help comes from the maker of heaven and earth, your help is limitless. If your help comes from human hands, it can be taken away. If your help comes from God's hands, no one can snatch it from you. This psalm is not about admiring the scenery, it is about recognizing the source. So the first lesson is simple. Don't confuse the tool with the source. Don't look at the mountain, look at the maker, the one who never slumbers. Continuous protection, verses 3-4. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. These verses give us the second picture, the Lord as the sleepless watchman. 3 times the psalmist emphasizes it. He will not let your foot slip. He will not slumber. He will not sleep. Why the repetition? Because we need to hear it again and again. In ancient times, city walls had watchmen. Their job was to stay awake through the night, scanning the horizon for enemies. But every human watchman grew tired. Every guard could nod off. And when the guard fell asleep, the city was vulnerable. But the psalmist declares that our God is not like that. The one who watches over you does not get tired, does not take a break, does not close his eyes for even a moment. He is the sleepless keeper. Think about what that means for you. When you go to bed at night, you have to close your eyes. You become vulnerable. You are unconscious for hours. But while you sleep, your God does not. While you rest, He keeps watch. While you are powerless, He is powerful. Have you ever realized that some of the greatest deliverances of your life happened while you were completely unaware? Accidents that didn't happen. Temptations that were blocked. Attacks of the enemy that were stopped before they even reached you. You never even knew about them, because your keeper never slumbers. The secret here is this: God is working when you are resting. God is watching when you are unaware. God is active when you are helpless. That means you can lay your head on the pillow at night and say, "Lord, you've got this. I don't have to stay awake worrying because you never sleep." So the lesson is clear. Trust the God who never closes His eyes. The shade at your right hand, personal protection, verses 5-6. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Now the psalmist shifts from general protection to personal protection. Notice the word, your. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. This is not just about Israel as a nation. This is about you personally. Why the right hand? In Hebrew thought, the right hand was the place of action, the place of strength, the place of battle. But it was also the place most exposed. Soldiers carried their shields in the left hand and their swords in the right. That meant the right side was vulnerable. So the psalmist says, "The Lord is your shade at your right hand." He stands where you are weakest. He covers the place you are most vulnerable. That is personal protection. Then he expands the image. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. This is a picture of total coverage, daytime dangers and nighttime fears, physical threats and emotional anxieties, visible problems and invisible worries. The Lord guards you through them all. In the blazing heat of the day, He is your shade. In the superstitious fears of the night, He is your guard. Here is the secret. God's protection is not generic. It is personal. He knows your specific weaknesses. He knows where you are exposed. He knows the temptations that hit you hardest. And it is right there, at that vulnerable spot, that He stands as your shade. Many people think God's protection is broad and distant, but Psalm 121 says it is intimate and personal. He is your shade at your right hand. So the lesson is this: don't fear your weakness. Don't hide your vulnerability. Bring it to God, because the very place you are weakest is the place He promises to stand guard. He does not just protect you in general. He protects you specifically. The keeper of your soul, complete and eternal protection, verses 7 to 8. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. These closing verses are the climax. 3 times the psalmist repeats the promise. The Lord will keep you. The Lord will watch over you. The Lord will watch over your coming and going. This is the strongest emphasis in the whole psalm. First, He will keep you from all harm. Now that does not mean you will never face trouble. It does not mean you will never get sick, never face hardship, never walk through difficulty. What it means is that nothing can ultimately destroy you. Nothing can touch your life apart from God's permission. Nothing can derail His plan for you. He will keep you from ultimate evil. Second, He will watch over your life, your soul. This is deeper than physical protection. This is spiritual security. God is not just guarding your body. He is guarding your inner life, your eternal destiny. The New Testament echoes this when it says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." Philippians 1:6. Third, He will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. That is comprehensive. Every step, every day, every season of life, He is there, and not just now, but forever. That means His keeping does not end at death. It continues into eternity. Your keeper is not only with you on the road to Jerusalem, He is with you all the way to the heavenly city. The secret here is breathtaking. God's keeping is total and eternal. He guards your steps today. He guards your soul forever. He watches your coming and going, from your first breath to your last, and beyond into eternity. There is no gap in His coverage, no expiration date on His protection. So what is the lesson? Live with confidence, not arrogance but confidence. Not because the road is safe, but because the keeper is faithful. Not because the dangers are gone, but because the deliverer is with you. Don't shrink back in fear. Don't live as though you are unprotected. Live as though the Lord Himself is keeping you, because He is. When you put all these pieces together, Psalm 121 gives us a complete picture of God as our keeper. He is the source of our help, not the mountains. He is the sleepless watchman, not a guard who nods off. He is the personal shade at our right hand, not a distant protector. He is the keeper of our soul, not just for today, but forevermore. That is the secret most people miss. They read this psalm as poetry, but it is far more. It is a declaration of faith in the God who keeps us on the road of life. Here is the key that most people overlook when they read Psalm 121. The Lord will keep you. That phrase is repeated again and again. But what does keep mean? It does not mean that you will never face hardship. It does not mean that you will never get sick, never lose a job, never walk through trials. What it means is this: hardship cannot destroy you, because God Himself is guarding the relationship that matters most, your life with Him. He is not promising an easy road. He is promising His constant presence on the road. He is not promising to remove every danger. He is promising that danger will never have the final word. Think carefully. Many people treat God's protection like a guarantee of comfort. They say, if God is keeping me, then why do I still face problems? But that is not the promise here. The psalm is sung by pilgrims climbing a dangerous road, surrounded by thieves, exposed to heat by day and cold by night. God does not promise to erase the mountains. He promises to walk with you through them. He does not promise you will never be attacked. He promises that the attack will not overthrow His purpose in your life. That is the real secret. God is keeping your soul, not just your safety. He is guarding your eternal relationship with Him, not just your temporary circumstances. Mark this down. The real security of Psalm 121 is not that you will never stumble, but that you will never be lost. Not that you will never face danger, but that danger will never separate you from Him. Not that the road will be smooth, but that you will never walk it alone. That is the wealth of this psalm, and that is the promise you can take into every season of life. So what does this mean for us right now, in the world we live in? Let's bring it down to where you are sitting. First, ask yourself, where am I looking for security? Am I looking to the mountains, to my job, my bank account, my family connections, my own abilities? Or am I looking to the Maker of heaven and earth? It is easy to put confidence in the tools God has given us, but they are not the source. Your job can vanish, your health can change overnight, your resources can be drained. But the Lord who made heaven and earth never changes. Your first application is this: shift your trust from the mountain to the Maker. Second, remember this truth. God stands at your right hand, in the very place where you are weakest. That means you don't have to hide your weaknesses from Him. You don't have to pretend to be strong in areas where you are vulnerable. He already knows, and He has already promised to be your shade in that spot. Think about that. The very thing you are most afraid of, the weakness that embarrasses you, the temptation that stalks you, the anxiety that cripples you. That is where God promises to stand guard. So the question for you is this: will you let Him cover that weakness, or will you keep trying to cover it yourself? Third, do you really believe that God's keeping extends to your whole life, body, soul, and eternity? Too many believers live as though God only cares about their spiritual life on Sunday. But this psalm declares that He guards your going out and your coming in, today and forever. That means the details of your daily life matter to Him. Your commute matters. Your decisions at work matter. The way you raise your children matters. And it also means that when you take your final step on this earth, He will guard you into eternity. This is not partial coverage. This is total coverage. So, practically, what should you do? Write this down. Trust God's keeping in 3 ways: today, in your weakness, and forever. When you wake up tomorrow, say, "Lord, you are my keeper today." When you feel exposed in your weakest area, say, "Lord, you are my shade at my right hand." When you think about your future, say, "Lord,